Our imaginations can't even come close to how interesting life really can be. I was talking to a client today, talking about he and his fiance. I told him, I said, for example, anytime you approach your fiance for sex with some pre-fantasy in your head, this is what I want to get her to do when we have sex. Not only is it manipulative and you're not present, but you're actually killing good sex. What if you just, both of you showed up and open to whatever came up? What came up between you, whatever dark thought, whatever fantasy. In my experience, when both people are just open to whatever comes up with no predetermined idea, we should do this when we get, when we have to take our clothes off, you can get pretty nasty, you can get pretty wild, because the two people are open to the adventure that sex, that life presents. For me, the nice guy is a person who inaccurately internalized at a young age an emotional belief, I'm not okay just as I am. Something wrong with me. It's called toxic shame. I'm bad, I'm unlovable, whatever that might be. And then, because it feels bad to believe you're unlovable, you're bad, you're flawed in some way, we all compensate. And by the way, everybody internalizes toxic shame as children or infants, because we all believe we're the cause of anything uncomfortable or bad that happens to us. It's our fault. So we all then try to do something with that to not feel bad and try to prevent future bad events from happening that make us feel bad. For nice guys, that's number one, is trying to become what we think other people want us to be in order to be liked and loved and get our needs met. There's something I call covert contracts operating in there for nice guys. So, like if I, every interview show I come on, what do I need to be for these guys to like me, improve me? For me, a lot of head nods while I'm talking, right? I wouldn't be at all authentic, right? It'd be better that I say some things that I get some perplexed looks or something like that. I disagree if I'm being authentic. But a nice guy is trying to become what he thinks other people want him to be, to get liked, loved, and get his needs met. And hiding anything about him that might get a negative reaction. Abuse, punishment, abandonment, rejection, feeling foolish. So these might be our needs, our wants, our feelings, our opinions, our desires, and almost always our sexuality. So that means the nice guys are walking around repressing basically their core life force, keeping it way down here, and just being, their authentic selves down there. And they're the chameleon out here trying to get approval. And so as I address nice guy syndrome, it's not about becoming a better person, a different person. It's about becoming more us, where we just, come here, not again, no balance here, where we just become authentic. We become real. We let the world see who we really are, for good or for bad, warts and all. Now, that takes quite a bit of work. And as I say, No More Mr. Nice Guy, we need to do that with safe people. It's not something you can do by yourself. So we do need a coach. We need a therapist. We need a men's group, a 12-step group, some place to go practice being real, authentic, and getting feedback that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Speaking to that last point, that shadow work, right? Like with Carl Jung's integration, becoming whole. It's just to speak to my own personal insight when I had that for myself. I didn't realize how averse I was to people who were cocky and arrogant, right? Because that was a shadow I had, right? Because I was so much in the humbleness. And I was like, what would Jesus Christ do? And that's how I avoided conflict. I, used Jesus Christ as a guise to avoid conflict. And I didn't recognize till graduate school that when I would get an angry reaction to other people and their personality, it's more about myself and those qualities I'm pushing down. Yeah. Right. And so I wanted to just kind of show a practical application about that to some of these men, that a lot of times what a coach can help with is give you a perspective on something that you didn't see, because most people in our life, they're not conscious or aware of why they're upset, or they don't have the courage to tell you.
Right.
So that's why a coach is really powerful, or a therapist who has a lot of awareness around this. They're like, yeah, you have that reaction because of this thing that you've been repressing all these years. And that leads to growth a lot. So
yeah, here's a rule of thumb. I tell people, anytime you have a reaction to anything that seems out of proportion to the present moment is probably old information. There's an old story being brought into the present, projected onto the present.
Well said.
And it is funny. You mentioned the religious thing. Jesus pissed off pretty much
I
every
know.
person he met. I mean, they fucking nailed him to a cross. He pissed off. I mean, he didn't just piss off this side and that side. He pissed off that side, and everybody else as well.
So I read stories about that, how he became angry and like authentically expressed that emotion, and so learning that later on in life was cool.
Yeah, I grew up fundamental Christian, so I grew
Same.
up with that whole indoctrination.
It's so funny because we've saved so many marriages, and it's like I see the same. I think I got some Tony Robbins, but if I'd be an idiot if I didn't see the same patterns repeat over and over, the commonalities of how it actually works. And so many guys struggle with the idea of this concept of letting go, right? We oftentimes refer to Dr. Hawkins' book of Letting Go as well, and Levels of Consciousness. And just the other day, I had a guy on the call, and he's like, Josh, I'm working on myself. I'm giving her space. But is there something else I can do, something I can say to her to get her back? And I want to say my response, Robert, and then I want to hear what you would say, because I told him the perception, the man you are that creates that question is also the man that she's rejecting.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of guys.
That's a good paraphrase of Einstein.
Is it?
Einstein said the thinking that got us into the situation we're in is not going to get us out of the situation we're in.
Right.
And just for you and your work, you have a lot more experience than I do. What is something that you would tell a guy like that to help him learn that lesson of letting go and recognizing that insight? Because for me, it's just like I tell them, and then just their consciousness just can't take in that information at the emotion they're at.
Here's the quickest way I've found to piss guys off. I'm fairly universally loved and liked among people I work with. But if I want to piss them off, I start talking to them about letting go of attachment to outcome. Yeah. And then they get pissed off. Yeah. Right. And kind of as if I invented this. I blame it on Buddha, but even
Buddha's the one that came up.
But Buddha did not even invent it. He just basically said that, life is suffering, and suffering comes from our attachments. It's human nature. We're going to suffer. I don't tell people you have to quit being attached, because it's a human nature to be attached. But I say, but you just know you're going to suffer. To whatever you get attached to, it will lead to suffering. Wanting is suffering. That's just the reality of life. And not that we're bad for wanting. It's not we're bad for having attachments. But the more we want and the more attachments we have, the more we get emotionally attached to a specific outcome, the more we're going to suffer. So I want that pretty woman to want me. I want my ex-girlfriend to want me back. I want my wife, who hasn't wanted to fuck me for 14 years, to turn into, this psycho nymph in bed. It's those emotionalized attachments to specific outcomes that not only cause us to suffer. I often say Buddha said that attachment is the cause of all suffering. I also say it's the cause of all anxiety. It's also the cause of all non-action, because I don't want to suffer, so I don't take action. And it's also the cause of all manipulation. So I'm going to try to manipulate that woman to like me. I'm going to try to manipulate to get my ex back. I'm going to try to manipulate this woman who I've been manipulating for 14 years is why she doesn't want to have sex with me. So the attachment is going to cause us to suffer and others to suffer. And it's usually where we lose our integrity. It's whenever you get attached to a specific outcome, 100% of the time you lose your integrity. Because now you're trying to game things to go the direction you want. That's not authentic. Okay. And again, these discussions really get guys pissed off. So why would I even get out of bed in the morning if I wasn't attached? And I go, actually, if you gave it a chance, if you can move more and more the direction, I call it being outcome agnostic, or being equally okay with every possible outcome, life gets really interesting. It becomes an adventure. And the more I get to where the less attached I am to things, the more excited I am to get out of bed in the morning. Because I know this is going to be a cool day. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know one of my mantras is I love waking up in the morning not knowing how my day is going to end. I love having adventure, even if that's struggle. I mean, just in the last 2 or 3 days in my business, we ran into 2 or 3 glitches. They go, kind of, what the fuck? Why is this happening? And in both cases, by working through the glitch, not only did we get the glitch solved, we came out with a more elegant way of doing it that we hadn't even known was possible or even thought of before. And I'm going, what good days those were. 2 things went wrong, and we came out of both of those with these really elegant new tools that we hadn't even dreamt of when we woke up in the morning. Okay. Same thing, whether it's relationship, opportunity, adventure. If we were able to run our lives, if we could say, here's how I want to plot my life out, it's going to go like this, this, and this, our imaginations can't even come close to how interesting life really can be. It's kind of like I was talking to a client today, talking about he and his fiance. And I told him, I said, for example, anytime you approach your fiance for sex with some pre-fantasy in your head, this is what I want to get her to do when we have sex. I said, not only is it manipulative and you're not present, but you're actually killing good sex. What if you just, both of you showed up and open to whatever came up? What came up between you, whatever dark thought, whatever fantasy, whatever, hey, you want to try this? What if you open to, because in my experience, when both people are just open to whatever comes up with no predetermined idea, we should do this when we get, when we have to take our clothes off, have sex, it can get pretty funky. It can get pretty nasty. It can get pretty wild because the two people are open to the adventure that sex, that life presents. So, yeah, how do I get guys to let go of attachment? All I found is that just keep pointing out to them where they're attached and how their attachment leads to suffering, anxiety, manipulation, and even non-action. Because like the guys that say, I want that woman, I want her, she's beautiful. So what do? Nothing. Mm-hmm. They don't even go talk to her because they're so attached that they want to get there. But what if they had no attachment to that thing? They could talk to anybody and everybody and walk through whatever doors open up because they're not attached. But again, Buddha talked about it 4,000 years ago, and 3,000, something like 3,000 plus. And wise men have been talking about it. Jesus talked about it, but it's a human condition. So how do we step outside of our attachments? And because guys will say, well, how do I know if I'm attached? You're suffering. That's how you know. If you're suffering, ask yourself, what am I attached to? And then ask myself, is there a way I could be equally okay with every possible outcome and know that I could handle any possible outcome and know that maybe the outcomes I can't even see or think of might actually turn out to be the most fun or the most liberating or the most growth producing or whatever they might turn out to be. Now, that takes a little bit of a leap of faith.
Every single guy hears from their wives that's pretty much, I'm no longer in love with you anymore. I need some space. So what does space really mean?
Yeah, as I said before, we had to restart the recording. Space is a masculine desire. It's not a feminine desire. Masculine desire is nothingness, just to be nothingness in space. So when a female creature says, I want space, it's suspect. If it's a euphemism for something else, which is just another way of saying, I don't want to be with you anymore when they say I want space. So, going back to what I teach men around dating, is that the goal of dating, conscious dating, is to get to rejection quickly. Find out quickly, is this person a good match for me? What's their nature? How do they fit into my life? Again, David Data, quote him, he said, choose a woman who chooses you, okay? And most guys go out and choose women who don't choose them and see if they can try to get the woman to choose them, which is kind of destined to fail because as soon as you start trying to go get a woman to choose you, you've made her the alpha and you're the beta. And how long is a woman going to be happy being in the alpha role with the beta? Because you've given her all the power. She's the decider. Okay. So you need to be the decider. Okay. So when a woman has low interest, and going back to the dating thing, doesn't matter if she says, I've got a boyfriend, doesn't matter if she says I'm busy, doesn't matter, whatever she says, it only means one thing. She has low interest in having ongoing interaction with you. And so it's not rocket science. Men try to get through, weave, what did that really mean? What's really the truth? No, the truth is, no matter what she said, she has low interest in being with you. When your partner says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, or I need some space, or I just need some time, or I need to go find myself, it all means the exact same thing. She has low interest in being with you. Now, she may be confused by that, and she may really want to find out why she doesn't feel what she used to feel. More often than not, she's already had some attention from somebody else that seems more interesting than any attention that she doesn't get from you. But it's still the same thing. It's low interest. And you mentioned earlier the guys that ask, well, how do I get my ex back? I'm not a big fan of that. I know there's a lot of gurus out on the internet that make big bucks on how to get your ex back. But that to me violates the whole code of choose a woman who chooses you. A woman doesn't fucking want to be with me. Adios. Don't let the door hit you on the ass. I want a woman who thinks I'm fucking amazing and can't imagine her life without me. Why am I going to chase somebody that has low interest in being with me? How stupid is that? Again, that Einsteinian thing that whatever thinking got us here is not going to get it out of it. Now, what always amuses me is when guys say, Robert, I read your book. I realized I drove my partner away because I'm such a nice guy. My passiveness, my pleasing, my seeking of external validation, my lack of risk. I get it. I get it. I've read the book. How do I go show her I'm different now and get her back? And I go, you don't. That's exactly what you've been doing that drove her away. You're trying to get her to get her to approve of you, to get her to like you, to get her to want to be with you. And that didn't work before. You're just doing it with a different theme now. Oh, look, I'm different now, baby. But you're still just trying to get her to get her approval.
I was just going to ask you, how many times have we seen guys say something like that, right? Like, okay, I've been in the program for about 3 weeks now, making these changes. How do I get her to show these changes?
How do I get her to see all these changes I've made and make her, get wet and want to be with me again?
Right. Exactly. And I think, I have a lot of empathy for the guys as well, because, they come into a program like this because that is their fundamental goal. They do want to save their marriages, but it's an unfortunate yet enticing paradox, which is what you're describing, which is only when you stop doing that thing will it potentially occur.
Is there, and if you have no attachment to that,
right?
Here's the thing. Again, I started doing couples counseling. I tried to do the math on it about 40 years ago, and so I made my living for many years doing couples therapy. When couples walked into my office, if they said to me, "We want you to help save our marriage," and I go, "I won't do that." I said, not my agenda. I said, if I wanted to enable you guys to be able to be together for a really long time, I teach you both to be really good liars. That's the best way I know to do it. If you want to guaranteed we're going to be together, just lie to each other about everything. Then you don't piss each other off, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing. I don't want to save your marriage. I don't think marriages are something you save. I think the marriage is something that you both go to work on your stuff. You use the marriage as a powerful personal growth machine. David Snarch uses that in his book, Passionate Marriage. Use it to bring up all your old stuff. Use it to, look at your projections. Use it to look at where are your walls? Where do you go on the attack? Where do you guard yourself from intimacy? Use the relationship to grow you. And if in the process of the two of you growing, you decide you like hanging out with each other, keep hanging out with each other. And if in the process of growing, you decide that, no, we actually have not liked each other for a really long time, it's probably better that you take steps to not be together. So again, if I try to save your marriage, that's an attachment to an outcome. I now start suffering along with you because I haven't done my job well if I don't save your marriage. So instead, let's help you both grow as individuals and then decide if it's just a no-brainer, do you stay together or not? And it usually is.
And that's why I have so much, I don't want to say the word pity, but I can't describe the other emotion when I see these guys who are on the avoidant extreme and they say things like, well, screw her. And it's like, you don't want to be that guy that you want to be that guy that if my woman doesn't want me, then fine. But at the same time, if you go far in that extreme, it's the guys that think that another woman, my favorite quote, I'll say this. My favorite quote was in Models by Mark Manson. He's quoting someone else, but he says, the only thing you have in common with the person you're with is you, right? And so when your partner is that mirror and she's showing you those behaviors that pushed her away from you, it's really ignorant to think that the next woman will bring those things. And like I had the fortunate opportunity of being cheated on my first 3 relationships, right? That's why I went to therapy in the first place.
Take you out of that Skinner box. You got the rough awakening to the real world.
Look, I could have said all women are cheaters, or there was something about me that led to these behaviors. And some guys go down that route of being the victim. And obviously that's the enemy of who we go down. But like, just to kind of put a point on what you were saying, it's like, yes, one of the most spiritually growth promoting environments is your romantic relationship with your partner. She's going to show you sides of yourself that you need to work on. And if you don't, it leads to a lot of ignorance and misery. So well said on that part.
And it's funny that almost every person I know who comes to me and says, I'm afraid of getting in a relationship because I'm afraid of being cheated on. They always get cheated on.
Yes.
There's something about bringing that paranoia that you either pick a cheater or you drive them to cheat on you because you've got so many walls up because you're so afraid of being cheated on. And like you, I'm not a big fan of playing the victim role. When I was leading men's groups, and a guy would start the group, whatever's up, usually whoever he's blaming, but let's say he's blaming, his wife or his girlfriend or his ex or whatever. I'd tell him, okay, first 2 group sessions, blame all you want. Tell us your sad story, be the victim. Second session ends, there's no more blaming. From here on out, it's all taking accountability and responsibility and getting your shit together. And so, sometimes we need to say, oh, poor me, she cheated on me. Oh, poor me, she did that. And it can get a lot of mileage. You can get some sympathy. You can, avoid taking any accountability or responsibility. But, also, as I say that, though, there's the other side of it. It's the nice guys come in, my wife left me. What did I do wrong? It must be me. And, I said, well, you also might consider that your wife doesn't do intimacy well, and that your wife, because we're all wounded, and, we're all trying to do relationship, carrying all the armor we armored up with to protect us from our wounds, and with our offensive weaponry, our lightsabers, our daggers, our swords. And, it's kind of like from the song Hallelujah. What I learned from love was how to shoot who first outdrew me. It's like that's what we're doing in love. I got deterrence. I'll blow you off the map before you can blow me off the map. We call that love, right? But that's what most people are doing. And so a lot of nice guys think if a woman leaves them, we tend to put women on the pedestal. Like we think they understand relationships better. They know everything. The truth is, I always say, listen, I love baseball. And I love baseball statistics, and I love hashing the game, but I can't hit a major league curveball or a fastball. Just because women talk relationships, read relationship books, watch Dr. Phil, if they actually were good at relationships, they wouldn't need all that stuff, right? Yeah. They would just show up, hey, I'm good at relationships because I'm a woman, right? They would show up with it. The truth is, I often think maybe women are worse at relationships than men. I think they have higher, unrealistic expectations. And they take everything personally. That really gets in the way of stuff.
What you were speaking to there, Robert, about the differences in how men and women come to relationships, and you can even bring a sort of masculine, feminine conversation into this, how men tend to sort of over it and on with it, problem solution focused, outcome oriented is the way I'm going to move through a process. Women tending to sort of stay in that present emotional experience. It's not that women are better or worse. It's not that men are better or worse. And in actual fact, we can bring this back to what you spoke about in David Data's opening paragraph, is that relationships aren't problems to solve. They're dances. They're things to tussle with. They're things to contend with. And it's I think one of the things that I notice a lot when I coach is that men are sort of wanting to solve or overcome these problems as opposed to dancing with these differences that exist in perpetuity.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful because, David uses the word tussle quite a bit. And it's a good way for men to approach it because, again, when guys, we all work with men. When men come to us with a problem, they're coming to an expert to want the expert solution. Give me the diagram, give me the schematic, give me the outline. I won't read it. I won't pay attention to it. But, if guys don't watch the YouTube videos that give them instructions of how to use the product. They won't read the instructions. We'll just dive into it and try to figure it out on our own, and they get frustrated when it does. But, we want the diagram and the schematic to figure out how life should work. And it doesn't. I think if we can come up with a few healthy principles that can guide us in most situations, like, if we're attached, we're going to suffer. That's a pretty good principle, right? And so if we notice we're suffering, we can say, well, what am I attached to? Well, my son is sick and I don't want my son to die. Well, that's a normal attachment. I was watching Mo Gadat on a podcast the other day. He wrote the book Solve for Happy. He interviewed me a couple of years ago on his show. And he was saying that what led him to write Solve for Happy was when his life was just destroyed when his son died. I think maybe around 20, something like that, 20 years old. And he even said on this interview, he said, I know if I could ask my son, if you knew that your death had made 51 million people happy, he goes, I know, he'd do it again in a heartbeat. So this was something that, of course, no parent would ever want to go through with their child. My mother lost her husband and two of her kids all within 11 months of each other. And then I almost died about 6 years ago of something that a tumor blocking my small intestine. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. None of the doctors I went. She was watching me die. I had empathy for my mother. By the way, it's easier to die than it is to watch somebody die. I got okay with dying. It really, I was fine with it. Watching somebody die, that's hard. So how do we turn that into being equally okay, with that? I mean, that's a challenge. So that is going to grow us. Yeah. There's no other way. We either get bitter with it or we grow it.
Bitter or better. Bitter or better.
I like that. That's it. See, there's a principle. Let's take that principle into life and use that.
Yeah. I think the underpinning for me of like my philosophy, it's really come from Alan Watts a lot. So, but
I like that dude. I think he's one of the most underappreciated spiritual dudes in Western writing.
Right.
He's an Episcopalian priest or something like that.
He was, and then because he was like indoctrinated heavily in Western religious ideology. He swung in the other pendulum swing in the Eastern philosophy, and he's probably one of the biggest mentors I know. Like that is dead. But I was just going to say that the story about the Chinese.
I wasn't going to bring that up. That he's dead. Just
I'm still grieving the loss of him. I'm attached to Alan Watts. Yeah. But the Chinese farmer fable.
I love that. I love.
I know, and it's one of those things though, Robert. It's like when we tell a guy this and he's going through it. It's like the analogy I give. It's like he's on these stairs. Like we're on this higher level of stairs. Higher is not better. It's not a moral superiority. But we're seeing consciousness in the perspective of his life from this higher level because we've been through the pain, we've done the work. And I feel like a guy who hears this and he's in the grief, he's in the pain, he's seeing his wife text this other guy in the house. He's like, okay, I got to do this thing, but like how? Like I'm in the pain. Like, and I think for me, at least personally, when I coach these guys, I have to come down to their level of consciousness and say, I get why you see the way you do, which is why I should give those guys 2 sessions to grieve and being the victim, because you're allowing them to like just expel and like that kind of energy. But at some point you have to start to do the work. But for me, it's like the hardest thing I have is like to get those guys to want to go up to the higher levels.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
That's an attachment, and even we coaches and therapists get attached. We want our people to make progress. We want them to get happy, right? Yeah. We want them to have results.
Yeah.
Again, this is human nature. And, it is okay for people to take as long as they take. When I left my second marriage, I finally got out the door, I got back into 12-step groups just to find a men's group, really. And I was going like 2 or 3 of these 12-step. And I was going to Sex Addicts Anonymous because usually it's all guys. And that's all I wanted. And I remember saying to close friends, I'm going to be as pissed off as long as it takes me to be pissed off. I said that might be 2 years. I don't know. But I gave myself permission to just go through what all the feelings were, know that they weren't all about her. You got to be in knowing that everything we're experiencing, like I said, if whatever we're experiencing seems out of proportion to the moment, it's probably old. And probably if we're feeling it, we've felt it.
Yeah.
Right? We've been there before.
I like that.
And so I gave myself permission to feel whatever I felt because I knew I was also working on old stuff at the same time. What attracted me to her in the first place? What kept me there for 14 years unhappy the entire time? What kept me trying to make it better? What kept me putting up with things? I can blame that all on her. Now, but I had to let myself have all the emotions to eventually come to a place of ownership and move forward and get to where she never crosses my mind. Now, I heard somebody say recently, I really like this. When you get to the place that you are now grateful for them, grateful for whatever you went through with them, whether it stayed together or didn't stay together. That's when you know you've done your work. You're done. You learned what you needed to learn.
Yeah.
You got a place of gratitude from it.
Tom, before you say something, I was just going to say, I forgot whose definition, maybe Brene Brown, or it might be Oprah, but I heard them say like
one of those wise prophetesses, right?
One of the wise prophets.
You got to love them both.
Right.
That forgiveness was when you can say thank you for the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I like that. Let's go with it. Whichever one of them said it, we'll give them both credit.
Yeah.
They both said it.
But it's a good measure. It's like such a good measure because it directly, like, it shows you exactly how far you are away from it. It's like, how do I ever forgive someone? It's like, you can't just say that in a mirror and sort of positively affirm that. And then you wake, oh, I'm like totally healed. It's like, no, if there's these attachments that are still there. The one thing, like, just to add to that as well, what I would say is if you are, like, to the degree that you're fulfilled and pumped up to be the man you are, because of that experience is the degree that you actually have forgiven that person or that circumstance or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much like a binary thing, I forgive her, I don't, or whatever it is. It's like, no, because I still don't quite like who I am. You know, I think one of my favorite quotes is that Alex Hormozy quote, you know, you don't get confident by shouting positive affirmations in the mirror, but by having an undeniable amount of proof that you are who you say you are. Outwork your self-doubt. And I think you can see that through the lens of forgiveness as well.
Yeah. If you can look around your life and go, I like where I'm at and I wouldn't be here if not for that.
Yes.
That we can have gratitude for everything. I tell people, like, when I do an interview or when I'm working with a client, I said, we would not be here right now if not for my second wife. We would not be talking. Now, maybe some other big stick would have hit me upside the head. I might have, ended up going in a similar but different, direction. But the fact that she was a big enough stick that I couldn't just keep weaseling out into my nice guy stuff and, just burying stuff, under the carpet, getting away with stuff, getting her to believe my lies, convincing myself, but I'm a good guy. She's the one who's angry all the time. I'm so fucking grateful for that. So, I don't know if that's part of my karma. I don't know if I chose that before I came along. I don't know, if it's fate. I don't know what it is, but I love where I'm sitting right now, having this conversation with you guys. My life is beautiful. My dog was sitting outside the door wanting to come in. It's a beautiful day in Puerto Vallarta. I love the woman I'm married to. My life, I love the work I get to do. I would not be in this place right now if not for that experience and that experience and that experience, many of which I didn't know how they were going to turn out in life. I didn't know, how am I going to get through this? And there's going to be more of those. There's going to be more that go, oh my, what now? What do I do now? How am I going to handle this?
Yeah.
And luckily we've been through enough that we go, okay, I've handled some others. I'll probably handle this too.
So toxic shame, I have these guys do a lot of exercises, and for you, is there like the highest leverage activity or exercise that helps guys release that shame or that trauma that you've seen has worked best for guys?
Oh, I'm going to venture out that maybe there's only one, and that is you have to reveal things about you that you don't want anybody to know to save people. I don't think there's, I've got a client, and every now and then, he lives in South Africa, and we do sessions. Every now and then I'll get a message say, I want to work on my toxic shame. And, all I know to tell him is I only know one way to do it. Just start telling me everything you don't want me to know about you. Mm-hmm. And I think you've actually probably done quite a bit of that. Now, no matter how much you do, I know, like when I've been in men's programs and like, we'll say, all right, look in this guy's left eye, and for 45 seconds, shotgun, tell him everything you don't want him to know about you. And I'm thinking, I've let the whole world know. I tell it on podcasts, interviews, everywhere. Everybody knows my stuff. And then all of a sudden something will come up and go, but not that one. I don't want to tell that one. So of course you tell it. That's really how I began what I call my nice guy recovery. Luckily, I ended up in a 12-step group, and I'd never shared anything dark or revealing or anything that might, make me look like less than a really good person. And I kept going to this program, met at 6 a.m. I looked forward to it, just going and telling stuff I'd never told anybody before. It was liberating. And to this day, I'm still a fan, and I don't think there's a substitute for finding safe people. 12-step group coach, therapist, men's group, men's program, and start not only telling the things about you don't want to be know, but just revealing who you are, right? Letting them see the real you in a social context. And then find out they can say, actually, that kind of pisses me off when you do that. And they can say that with love. Or they can say, I get bored when you kind of ramble on like that. But they say it with love. And you start actually getting, just you get the reality. Start dwelling in reality, with love. And you can let go of this stuff. I had a guy, he came to a workshop with me. And I'd worked with him individually as well online back when I lived in Seattle. And he came to a workshop. And we're talking about toxic shame. And he just started crying. And he just talked about, how bad a person he felt he was. Now, he was an African-American, tall black guy. And because he was big and black, he was always afraid of intimidating people. So he was really passive, nice guy. He had a girlfriend who treated him like shit, just treated him like shit. And so during a session, he was talking about his shame. I just feel like I'm such a horrible person. I go, can you give us an example? And he just burst into tears. And he said, when I was 14 years old, I stole a car stereo out of my neighbor's car.
Wow.
And there's a group of 5, 6 guys, 8 guys, maybe and they're all looking at him. And finally, somebody goes, that's it? Yeah.
Wow.
That's it? Yeah. I've done worse shit than that. Somebody else goes, man, that's just average 14-year-old dumb kid stuff. You've been carrying that around your whole life. Yeah, I just felt like. Now, of course, he had the shame that was there before that event. That's just the event but I tell you what, when this group of guys said, you're not a bad guy, that's the kind of dumb stuff all 14-year-olds do. And then they all start telling their dumb 14-year-old stuff. And they all, and I asked them, I said, do you want to go around the room and ask if anybody has judgment of you for that? Okay. Not one person had any kind of judgment for him. They had more love for him because he was so real and so honest and so vulnerable and transparent. All that Brene Brown kind of stuff. They loved him more for all of that stuff. Yeah. And he left that workshop, dumped the girlfriend, wrote me about 6 months later, had a new girlfriend, a therapist who treated him like gold, all because in one safe environment, he let go of this thing he'd been packing around. And that probably just started releasing a lot of this stuff that he inaccurately internalized about himself. So, if I could, we got to have safe people.
I think I was going to ask, is there something that we could all release right now on this podcast? Is it like some sort of like toxic shame or like just a challenge? Like, I feel like I'm really safe with you guys, like something that we could all just bring out.
How many million people are going to watch this?
I mean, over the course of it, if it's exists, probably a lot. But Tom, if you want to lead first, before you do, Tom, I would just say, I want to see if I can articulate that in a different way. And I'm going to, so like Dr. Dispenza, I love his work, right? Just talking about how when you hold on to the past, you'll be that past self, or you repeat the same future. So shame is the idea about I'm a bad person, right? And all these guys have that core universal wound. Deeper the wound, the more universal it is. I'm not good enough. That's what men struggle with, right? And so when you've done those shameful things, and going back to the beginning, when you're young, you're like, oh, I do something, it's because of me, or something happens to me, it's because of me. We're egocentric as our ego's developing. So these things that we do, it's like, I'm a bad person. You're going to carry that subconsciously, and you're going to get the results you want, right? So
always.
The thing about releasing that shame, I just want to add on to this is like, I remember a client too, Robert, where he was really ashamed by the porn he watched, right? And this is when I was working with guys helping them with porn. And I told him to tell his girlfriend, and he was just like, got red. He was like, no, she'll dump me, and she'll think I'm disgusting. After weeks and weeks and weeks of working with him, I got him to finally tell her. He said, Josh, she listened. She took it in because she knew I was being serious. She was like, 1, I don't see you any differently. I still love you. And I watch that porn too.
Oh, wow.
I thought you were going to say she invited him to watch it together.
Yeah.
And like, think of this thing that he was holding as like
forever.
The cave here, the inner holes of treasure you seek, right? Joseph Campbell. And like these fears that we think that people are going to judge us and why we're not good enough. It's like when you enter that cave and you reveal that, even if she did leave him because of it, like that's still a good thing, right? Because that like his cards on the table. Yeah. And so any guy listening to this, it's like,
and he told it to you first. That's the go to a safe person.
Bingo.
and
Bingo.
tell it.
Yeah, bingo,
Love
exactly. Yeah.
Love
So,
that.
yeah.
Wow.
All right, Tom, what do you want us to do here?
Yeah, Tom, reveal the
just
skeleton.
Josh is. Why did I invite him to come on this call?
I'm so
Josh goes. He keeps interrupting me. He doesn't let me ask my
He leaves the
questions.
room, we have
Give
to
my
start
great.
recording all over again.
He quotes fucking poetry for us.
This is-
You
I
know,
want to bring in
what-
some.
now-
I want to
now-
bring in some
the
feminine
charm.
chaos into the
Now-
conversation.
That's it.
now,
Yes.
now we got to talk about our shame.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think
Tom.
it's a good. Yeah. I think it's a good thing to do to, like, in the spirit of leading by example. I really believe that. We had a guest on recently. She's a fellow psychotherapist, and she completely agrees. Like, you've got to do your own work as well. And as you were speaking, Robert, I was thinking about some of the things that I sort of hold on to.
Are these things you've already shared with safe people?
I feel I have a very, very good group of core male friends who I feel very safe with, and they call me out on my shit, and I do the same to them. So
that's not what I asked you. I asked you is what you're about. Because here, let me say this about shame though.
Please.
Because shame is so insidious. Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is so sneaky. I'm a big believer. It probably is best done in somewhat of a safe container, where there's parameters around that container about the information. Doing this on a podcast for all the world to watch is not exactly that kind of container parameters. But that's why I said if you shared it with other people, because my thought is if you've shared it, because everything I've told on here or any other interview, I've already told it with enough safe people. I don't care who in the world knows about it.
Right.
I've even thought, like, if somebody comes and wants to attack me someday, Dr. Glover, Robert Glover, you're a fraud, you're a this, you're a that. I know this about you. I go, tell me whatever you know, and I'll fill in more details for you. Yeah, I'll give you. I've even got more dirt I can give you. So it's great to not have any fear that anybody could ever attack you for anything in secret. Because so I'm very open about it. But I've also shared this with safe people in all the environments before I share it publicly. On YouTube videos. So anyway, with that said, where do you want to take us?
No, I'm with you. And hey, by the way, like, I totally agree with you. And this is not a revelatory thing. It was more just like a question of what we could all do. But I've spoken about a lot of my past in my books. On podcasts, I've done 500 episodes of podcasts previously, and so I feel confident about it. But one of the things that came up for me when I was listening to you both talk was that you have both had experiences in past relationships where those relationships have been revelatory for you and have been catalysts for growth. And one of the things that I don't necessarily feel ashamed about it, but I feel somewhat ignorant when I'm helping other men in these experiences, because I've only been with one person in a serious relationship for 8 years, and it's a wonderful relationship and it serves my becoming. But there is an aspect of, like, I wonder if I'm not good enough, or I wonder if I don't know enough because I haven't sort of been in those experiences. So I just thought
that makes sense. But let me take it the other way. Okay.
Please.
I've been married 3 times. So it means I've been divorced twice. I've cheated and I've been cheated on. So there's parts of me that says, well, I've got this stuff. Who's going to take me seriously? Right? You're at the other end. Well, I don't have any of that stuff. How can I seriously do it? And I used to joke a few years ago when I was single that and started teaching men to date, because I got out in the dating world in my 40s and 50s and didn't know what I was doing. And through trial and error, I learned. And guys would say, teach me. So I was at the point where, again, you got to be able to laugh about all this stuff.
Cool.
I would say, I'm a marriage and family therapist who's been divorced twice, a dating guru that doesn't have a girlfriend, and guys still line up to pay me money.
That's awesome.
So the point is not like that. Again, our brain can beat us up. Our brain can say to us, on one hand, I've not had enough of these painful experiences to be able to relate to people going through their pain. But you'll be able to relate to them in ways that I can't, or Josh can't. Now, I could be over here and say, well, who am I? I've been divorced twice. I'm on my 3rd marriage. I've cheated. I've been cheated on. I've been bankrupt. Who am I to be able to help people? But the truth is, what we've been through, our unique life is what allows us to help and serve other people. So it's easy for our minds to talk us in or out of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And again, even releasing that kind of internal dialogues in safe places is partly how we release our shame. Because if our brain keeps telling us we're not good enough in some way, that's just a shame building machine. It's just perpetuating internal shame.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is it's like the men who
Is this a joke from the routine last night?
I wish I could. Honestly, Robert, when I send you the podcast link, I'm going to send you my routine. You're going to see it 5 minutes.
Okay, I want to see it.
But it's funny because you know, we say marriages, and I'm not married, right? And sometimes we'll get guys curious about that, and it was an insecurity of mine when I first started going into helping these guys, especially when I came out of grad school and I'm like helping couples, and I'm like, okay, I was just cheated out of my second relationship. I'm trying to give these guys advice.
Let me help. I can help.
Yeah.
I got letters after my name. I can help.
I gave a little line of like, well, does a doctor need to have cancer to know how to treat it? That's one of my responses. But then on the deeper level, I was like, I'm not just helping these guys save their marriage. That's not what I'm helping. Yes, sell them what they want, give them what they need, alluding to your, the dating stuff, right? 100%. Behind closed doors, I'm telling them to like go into the pain. Like they're a fellow man in pain that is being torn apart because the woman they love doesn't want them anymore. I've experienced that darkness multiple times. And so like, Tom, to you, man, it's like, yeah, man, like you have so many, focus on the similarities with these men, right? And sharing that emotional journey. So.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree. It's just interesting. Like you have these, I think you can't help but be self-reflective. And I've had a background in being obsessively minded about things. And I just think about these things, and I love a book when it really speaks to me and when it really resonates with me. And No More Mr. Nice Guy was obviously one of those books. And just as we're talking about it, I think it's, I never want to be considered someone who like knows it all, and I'm so very much attached to that idea of being a fellow traveler. But then sometimes, like what you were saying, Robert, that sort of pendulum swings too far the other way, where it's like and maybe it's part of the Australian society of the tall poppy syndrome, getting cut off and all that sort of thing, right? Maybe I pull myself back a little bit and don't allow myself to sit in that lovely sort of centered, confident area. But in the spirit of blurting things out, I just thought it was necessary to do so.
Yeah. Well, and we're not doing therapy on you here, but is it also possible that you maybe could be taking some bigger chances in life? Now, not necessarily around your relationship per se, but if you listen to if you get into the world of success coaching and business stuff like that, most people say, man, if you haven't had a few failures, few bankruptcies, how are you going to learn?
Right.
So it could be that maybe you don't have enough good stories because I need to venture out a little bit. I don't know. I don't know you, but if I was to take a stab at something like that, one of the things I like to tell people is he who dies with the most stories wins. And I had one guy tell me one time, I hate that you make a competition between men. And I go, that's not a fucking competition. That was just a funny way, a playful way of saying, go have a big life.
Yeah.
Go have a big life. And you know what? The funniest stories, kind of going back to Josh and stand-up, the funniest stories are the ones that you're laughing and crying at the same time.
Yeah.
They're the stuff that, this fucking hurt, but let me tell you how ironic it was. Let me give you the irony of it. And we see the humor in it as well.